did you form an opinion of your state of mind?
I did.
And what was that?
My opinion that Nate Paul was a criminal and that we should not be associated with Nate Paul. My evaluation of the allegations made by Nate Paul is that they were absolutely ludicrous, without merit, no probable cause, not even reasonable belief that a crime had been committed.
Now let me step aside for just a moment and say, or ask you, what were the nature of the allegations that Mr. Nate Paul was making?
The nature of the allegations that he was making were against the FBI, an investigator with the Texas State Security Board, 2 U.S. attorneys, the senior federal magistrate, Mark Lane, and others who were involved in the chain of the signing and execution of the search warrants on his business, his place of storage, and also his home.
Maybe I'm not clear on it. Did you at some time tell General Paxton what you thought about this idea of Mr. Paul, that there was a vast conspiracy against him?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
I told him that Nate Paul was a criminal. He was running a Ponzi scheme that would rival Billy Saul Estes, and that if he didn't get away from this individual and stop doing what he was doing, he was going to get himself indicted.
What did he say he wanted?
He wanted us to tell Nate Paul that we were not going to be doing an investigation due to the results of our forensic analysis.
So going into that third meeting, is that what you believed it was going to be about?
Yes.
Was that meeting recorded like the first 2?
No.
Who was responsible for it not being recorded?
General Paxton specifically told us that he did not want that meeting recorded.
Okay, so as you're going into a meeting in which you believe it's just for you to tell Nate Paul that you're not going to do his bidding, what happened?
The Nate Paul was there along with his lawyer, Michael Wynn. I had my 2 forensic experts, Mark Penley, myself, and General Paxton. My forensics people explained to Nate Paul the results of their forensic examination.
And very briefly, what was that result?
That the metadata that he was talking about that had changed could have been changed by the fact that there were documents he received had been electronically redacted and encrypted, which would change the metadata.
Is that a long way of saying there was nothing there?
Yes.
So, your understanding that General Paxton was telling you tell him that you're not going to have an investigation. What was General Paxton's? What did he say during that meeting?
During the meeting, he was supporting Nate Paul's position, which was that we need to do an investigation. And he was pretty adamant about it.
Was that meeting heated?
It became heated.
Who became heated?
Nate Paul.
Before that meeting started, were you aware of any public statements that Mr. Paul had made about whether there was an investigation?
Yes, I was.
And what were those public statements you're aware of?
He had done an interview with a business journal and told them that the Texas Attorney General was investigating the FBI and their handling of the search warrants again on his property.
Was that true or not?
That is false.
In fact, you had not started an investigation, correct?
We had not, and I specifically told Mr. Paul that we were not doing an investigation at this point, and our meetings were confidential.
And the response?
yeah, he responded.
What was his response?
He was very angry, and he said that he still has a First Amendment right. And I told him that all you're doing is using the power and the prestige of this office for your own purpose, and I'm not going to allow that.
Whose side in that dispute between you and Nate Paul did General Paxton take?
Nate Paul. I know his state of mind because in the meeting he threatened to fire me. So I knew then what his commitment was to Nate Paul, and he was not going to be deterred from continuing to try and do things that benefit Nate Paul.
I want to talk just a moment about what I'll call retaliation. Were you retaliated against for what your actions that you took in this case?
Yes.
Tell the members of the Senate briefly how you were retaliated against.
That he retaliated against me, is what
Yes.
you're asking. Well, in firing me, at the time I was 71 years old and had risen to a top level of law enforcement. In effect, when he fired me and then berated me in the news, he ended my career.
By that time, your career had taken up how many years?
It was 48 years.
Were you proud of your career?
Absolutely.
What is an F5 form? That's an F as in Frank 5, the number.
It's a TCOL form.
TCOL means what?
Texas Commission on Law Enforcement.
What's the importance of TCOL?
TCOL is the regulatory agency for all peace officers in the state of Texas.
And so what happened at first with regard to your TCOL license and the F5 form?
The F5 form is a form that is required for the agency to fill out anytime they separate from a law enforcement officer. There are three things that you can mark on the F5. It can be an honorable discharge, it can be dishonorable, or it can be a general discharge.
Is a general discharge good or bad?
Bad.
Did you contest that?
I did.
Did you join in the filing of a whistleblower lawsuit? We call it that. Why did you sue?
I sued because he ended my career in a very unjust manner.
Eventually, partly as a result of the lawsuit, was the general discharge reversed and you got an honorable discharge.
Yes.
Is that important?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's important to me to show that I had an honorable discharge and that I did nothing wrong by standing up for right.